Recording has been started.
Good morning, our viewers in US, and good evening to our distinguished present expert and other people in India. Welcome to yet another session of Distinguished Lecture Series organized by the Council for Strategic Affairs. Today's topic for our distinguished lecture is the Integrated Theater Commands, the Way Forward. Those of you who registered probably will notice that in our flyer there was a mistake in timings in India, and that was because of change in daylight saving time in US. So we apologize for that mistake. We have tried to notify people about the change in time in India. I'll give a brief introduction to the Council for Strategic Affairs. Council for Strategic Affairs imparts education in the field of international relations. Council for Strategic Affairs promotes and fosters discussion, dialogue, and debate on geopolitical issues. Council for Strategic Affairs encourages strategic studies in general to raise the level of awareness. CSA condemns violence and terrorism in any form worldwide, and CSA aims to contribute towards world peace and prosperity. A little bit about our activities. We do a monthly roundtable discussion. It is held on second Saturday of each month at 10 a.m. EDT New York time. Every fourth Saturday, we have a monthly guest lecture by a domain expert like we are having today. CSA also organizes symposia, meetings, and conferences. It promotes publication of articles on geopolitics and related subjects, and CSA has started a summer internship program for college students. In today's distinguished lecture series, we really feel deeply honored to have retired Air Marshal Dr. R.C. Bajpayee, who will be speaking before us. This lecture was originally scheduled for January, but because of certain reasons had to be postponed. I am really highly thankful to Air Marshal Dr. Bajpayee to be able to come and make this presentation today. A little bit about our distinguished speaker. Air Marshal Dr. R.C. Bajpayee was commissioned in the Air Force in the year 1960. After more than 36 years of distinguished service, he superannuated in 1996 in the rank of Air Marshal as Air Officer Commander-in-Chief of Maintenance Command. While in service, he obtained MTech in radar technology and PhD in electronic warfare, both from IIT Delhi. He is also a graduate of National Defense College, New Delhi, and has passed Advance Diploma in Russian language. He has been trained in USA and Italy on electronic warfare. As a technical officer, he was responsible for planning, installation, maintenance, repair, and procurement of technical equipment, both within India as well as from abroad. He was awarded PVSM and AVSM by the President of India for his meritorious service. He was awarded Vishisht Vidyarthi Samman by Kanpur University in the year 2004. After his retirement, he has been an advisor to UPSC. He has also been teaching as a guest faculty in an engineering college. He is associated with a large number of organizations for the upliftment of weaker sections of the society. Presently, he is the national president of Forum for Awareness of National Security. He provides counseling and help to central services aspirants for their UPSC interviews as chairman of mock interview boards. During his service careers, he used to adopt nearby villages to his place of posting and help the villagers with counseling and other material assistance. While commanding Air Force Station in Kanpur, he started Industrial Training Institute, ITI, recognized by the Government of India and managed by the Air Force. He is a widely traveled person. Some of the countries visited by him are USA, UK, Italy, France, Holland, and Russia, etc. Just one correction, I misspoke. He is currently the patron of Forum for Awareness of National Security. In the past, he was president as well as a founder member of Forum for Awareness of National Security. So we are going to have a very educational and informational lecture from our distinguished guest on integrated theater commands, the way forward. And if you think about India, it is a very, very relevant topic as we are today, as we face security threats today. I will just make a couple of comments. Every war, every standoff, every confrontation, every special operation, every battle teaches you a military lesson. You can learn from everything, whether it is Battle of Panipat, on which we had a roundtable discussion, whether it is 1962, Indochina War, Kargil War, and even foreign wars like Madeline's War on Serbia and the current ongoing Ukraine-Russia war. There are lessons to learn and lessons to draw and improve upon your strategic capabilities. Concept of integrated theater commands is not new in India, but implementation at a different scale is new. The number of commands was reduced from 17 plus 2, 19 to 5 integrated theater commands by the CDS, but jointness and integration does create challenges. You know, when you are integrating different services, and we want to hear from an erudite strategic expert and military expert as to what is the way forward. Some housekeeping rules. Please mute yourself to avoid noise interference. Please change your cell phone setting to vibration mode. Please do not try to interrupt our esteemed speaker. Only those members of the audience who identify themselves openly will be allowed to pose questions. So no anonymous questioners, please. Please send all your questions through the chat function. Please be very precise and specific in asking a question. Please do not send detailed comments or a mini lecture in the form of questions. And lastly, like every presentation for CSA, we are recording this presentation. It will be available on our YouTube channel as well as on our website within 24 hours. So at this juncture, I'm going to invite our distinguished expert, a very erudite airman come soldier, Air Marshal Dr. R.C. Bajpayee. Sir, the floor is yours, and I'm deeply honored to you for coming today.
Thank you, Dr. Adityan. Good evening, guests in India, and good morning, guests in USA. Today's topic, Integrated Theater Command, the way forward, is a very controversial and highly debated subject. I'll try to put up my views on the subject by giving a little brief introduction as to what is existing today, what is proposed, what are the objections and the views of other services, and then my own views at the end. You all know that national defense policy is based on the threat perception from its neighbors, their military potential, our own resources, and international relations. And defense forces structure is in turn governed by the national defense policy. Our national policy does not envisage global operations. We inherited the present structure of three services, that is Army, Air Force, Navy, from the British government, which has been successfully working for more than 7 decades. Our defense forces have successfully fought different wars starting from 1947, then 65-71, and the Kargil War jointly. In 1962 debacle, Air Force was not deployed. After the Kargil War, a high-powered Defense Review Committee had recommended appointment of a CDS as a single point contact to advise government, better synergy amongst the three constituent services, and many other recommendations. A Shakatkar committee constituted by Defense Minister Shri Parrikar in 2016 recommended a concept of theater commands. And as Dr. Adityan has mentioned earlier, that after each war, we mull over the kind of gains, losses, the tactics, where we committed mistakes, what advantages we would have gained if we had adopted different strategy and tactics. After that, constitution of Defense Committee by Minister of Defense Shri Rajnath Singh, and he appointed General Rawat as the first Chief of Defense Staff on 1st January 2020, as recommended by the Kargil Review Committee in 1999 and 2000, around that. Superannuated Committee, they had recommended this appointment of CDS and tasked him on June 2021 with the restructuring of defense forces on the concept of theater command and complete the project by the end of 2022, which in my opinion was a very tall order and somewhat unrealistic considering the size, the controversies, opposition to this kind of concept. General Rawat started his work in right earnest and full dedication, but unfortunately, his life was snatched away in the middle of the project in a tragic helicopter accident. We shall now briefly discuss the existing structure, the proposed one, the need for change, and points in favor and against the theater concepts, the reaction of the constituents, and the road ahead. The present structure of commands, as Dr. Adityan mentioned, that we have 19 commands as of now. Of these, 14 are geographic commands, 3 naval commands, and 2 combined commands. The Strategic Force Command and Tri-Service Andaman and Nicobar Command, which was formed in 2001 and is commanded by 3 service personnel, senior personnel by rotation. 14 geographical commands are 7 Army and 7 Air Force commands. 7 Air Force commands are Western Air Command at Delhi, Southwestern Command at Gandhinagar in Gujarat, Eastern Command at Shillong, Central Air Command at Allahabad, Southern Command at Trivandrum, Training Command at Bangalore, and Maintenance Command at Nagpur. And 7 Army commands are Western Command at Chandigarh, Eastern Army Command at Kolkata, Northern Command at Udhampur, Southern Command at Pune, Central Command at Lucknow, Army Training Command at Shimla, and Southwestern Command at Jaipur. 3 Navy commands are Western Naval Command at Mumbai, Eastern Command at Visakhapatnam, and Southern Naval Command at Kochi. There already exists a 3 services command at Andaman and Nicobar NC, as I mentioned earlier, since 2001. Call it a joint command or integrated command, theater command. In a sense, it is truly integrated to undertake independent operations necessitated by the distant location from the mainland, not for any other reason, because other resources could not have been jointly deployed. In November 2001, headquarter IDS, that is Integrated Defense Staff, was constituted to manage procurements, development joint doctrines, joint training and common procedures for 3 services, The Defense Cyber Agency, the Defense Space Agency, and the Armed Forces Special Operation Division are essentially joint organizations that have been under the headquarter integrated defense staff. The proposed theater command structure, now I'll discuss briefly that. The Shakatkar Committee had recommended the formation of 3 integrated theater commands, namely Western for Pakistan border, Northern for China border, and Southern for the maritime role, and 1 air defense command. This concept envisages the optimization of resource utilization. Of course, this is debatable. The 2 land-based theater commands will handle the operations against Pakistan and China. The Western Theater Command for Pakistan is proposed at Jaipur, and Northern Theater Command for China will be based at Kolkata or Lucknow. That has not yet been decided. The Maritime Theater Command is proposed to be based at Karwar, and the Air Defense Command will be based at Gandhinagar in Gujarat or maybe Allahabad. It is further learned that the theater commands, after their formation, will first take the operational role of a single service command under them. Single service commands will be gradually phased out, with their other functions like logistics and training being progressively handed over to the new theater commands. It implies that their training, their equipment, logistics, all that will be controlled by the theater commander. Further, the existing Army's Northern Command at Udhampur, which undertakes counter-terrorism operations, will not be disturbed. There is also a plan to relocate the resources of one theater to another theater as and when a contingency arises, which is again a kind of point for discussion, whether these kind of exchanges, particularly in the case of Air Force, are all right or not, or there will be some problems, which I'll mention later. The groundwork for theater commands has already commenced. 4 existing commanders-in-chief, that is not air officer commanding-in-chief, air officer commanding-in-chief, army commanders, and naval commanders. 2 lieutenant general, 1 air marshal, and 1 vice admiral have been nominated to work out and raise their proposed theater commands. They can take help of officers from other services. The new theater commanders will be appointed once the structure are ready and are in place. Now, there are views in favor of theater commands. The integrated theater command will be free to train, equip, and exercise total command and control. It will be self-contained entity and will not be answerable to individual services, which is the case now because they have to consult their services for their expert deployment of their forces. The theater command will have all logistic resources necessary to support its operation to achieve the desired goal. It will not be required to depend on other services for anything during ongoing operations. Now, there are views against the operation as well. India has since 1947 won all the wars fought jointly with commendable cooperation with all the 3 services, except in 1962, when the Army was fighting alone. The other services like Air Force and Navy were not deployed. It may be recalled that in October 1947, when Pakistan had attacked Jammu and Kashmir, there was an urgent requirement to move the ground forces at the earliest. Road movement would have taken a long time, and therefore Air Force was called upon to airlift the army and their equipment. There was no proper airfield, only a kacha airstrip was available. In a daredevil act, one of our Air Force officers, Air Commodore Baba Meher Singh, he successfully made the first landing, and thereafter there was no stopping. And you know the result, we won and pushed out these people, these Pakistani forces, in no time. Similarly, in 1971, operation there was an urgent requirement to move the army and their equipment across the border. Lieutenant General Sagat Singh, he rang up Group Captain Chandan Singh, who was looking after the Air Force assets and the operations for air support. he bypassed all the protocols. Otherwise, if he had gone through the command level and then again to the unit and further down, it would have taken a very long time. And we do not know what kind of objections would have been raised by a person. So he directly contacted Group Captain Chandan Singh, who was the Air Force commander present at that time. And he promptly offered his services and started his operation without any delay and with the meager resources which he had at that time with him. He had helicopter and uh, other other aircraft, two aircraft, one Dakota, and with the help of these meager resources, he conducted the full operation, and in no time he transported all the facilities, the personnel and their equipment across the border. Now, similarly, uh, let me tell you one thing more before I proceed further. Air Chief Marshal P.C. Lal, who was fully involved in the operations at that time, he has mentioned in his memoirs the kind of cooperation which was exhibited by the Army and Air Force at that time. And this is not the first time. It has been seen even earlier occasions when they had jointly operated. All the three services, wherever there was a need for tri-service joint operations, every service has performed very well. And wherever we had the requirement for the bi-services, they have joined very well. And on no occasion, except the one which I mentioned about Kargil, I'll discuss what were the perceptions at that time little later. Now, far away land war and medium to high intensity war are a distant possibility. Our kind of doctrine and our national policy does not envisage our operation away from the mainland. The government policy does not speak about this so far, except Andaman and Nicobar, which is because of the distance involved, and that's how they had to be equipped fully from the Air Force side as well as the Army to conduct independent operations there. Now, with the development of IT and communication system, again in the favor of why against integration, why the integration should not be done, there are arguments that with the development of IT and communication systems, consultation and planning between the services at all times and particularly during operations has become very easy, and physical or spatial distance is no problem. Hence, thinking with the existing system of command and control is not required. We should not tinker with that, and that's what the opposition says, the views against integration. Domain knowledge of the integrated commander is likely to be limited in respect of other two services, which is a fact. But the counter argument could be that they will have advisors from other services for the specialist opinion. Now, mind one thing is there, that if you have to depend on the advisors of other services, then what is the harm in our present kind of concept which is going on now? But anyway, in fact, in addition to whatever theaterization is contemplated, it is important to have integration of minds. Unless there is an integration, whatever integration you do, it's not going to give you the desired results. And as I have mentioned to you earlier, that 1971 war, there was perfect integration of minds, as is exemplified by the prompt response from the Air Force when Air Force Army came to demanding this particular operation across Meghna River. Now, the three services, what they say particularly Army, in fact, this whole idea has been moved by Army itself. As such, it supports the kind of theaterization and better command and control of unified structure. This is what their argument is. Consultation or clearance from other services will not be required. They don't have to depend, as it happened in 1971 war, when they asked Air Force, and Air Force initially did not agree for the helicopter operation, which I'll discuss now. Air Force, they have objection. It does not have enough resources. There are only 31 squadrons against the sanctioned strength of 42. I'm talking about the fighter squadrons. It does not have enough air-to-air refuelers and AWACS to allocate them to different theater commanders. And once you divide that, then of course your efficiency and operational capability will go down. Navy says the current arrangement is working well and satisfactorily and ideally suited for strategic and tactical role, so they don't recommend the changes. So these are the views of various participants, constituents. Now the challenge in implementing theater commands, which they will face, is structural issues of command and control. The basic training and the operational deployment philosophy is different for each service. Presently, the aircraft can be deployed from any base, depending on the requirement for undertaking missions, which could be facilitated for enhanced endurance with the help of air-to-air refuelers. This advantage, as I mentioned earlier, will be affected if the resources like AWACS refuelers are divided between different theaters. And interoperability between theaters will not be seamless because of the lack of familiarity of the area of operation by the operators of one theater to another, particularly in the case of Air Force, which has to have its plan and experience. Suppose one particular theater, whether it is the Northern Theater or the Western Theater, they get trained for a particular terrain, particular setup, and they are strictly controlled for their training, their deployment, their logistics. And if they are suddenly shifted to Western Theater, Northern Theater, that will have a lot of problems. So interoperability is an issue there. These are the challenges. Then shortage of resources. As I mentioned, we have only 31 squadrons today, and more squadrons are being phased out, whether it is MiG-21 different series, which they have outlived, though we have been trying to upgrade, modify, and do all our best. Of course, that was the concept adopted decades ago, and we have been carrying on with whatever resources we have. And you know, the modernization did not take place for long 10 years, from 2004 to 2014. And that had set back our planning, procurement, modifications, and equipping our Air Force with the required number of squadrons. So therefore, that kind of view expressed by, and this is a challenge that has to be sorted out. And then inter-service competition and ego. That is another thing which has to be, it's a kind of, we cannot deny that there is a kind of personal element involved, and every service wants its turf to be guarded very carefully and strictly. And lack of experience, as I said, we have the experience of concept of theater operation in Sri Lanka by the peacekeeping force, where we lost large number of helicopters and pilots and had to revert to joint operations. Now, what is the way forward? I have slightly different view on the subject, maybe called little contrarian view of restructuring of commands. Subramaniam Committee had recommended need for better synergy between different arms of defense forces. They found that the synergy was lacking, and how they concluded that it had not recommended restructuring of commands to the theater concept, which was later on aided by Shakatkar Committee. Now this synergy is enhanced when two or more bodies think and act in unison towards achieving a common goal. The synergy cannot be enhanced by just converting the joint manship into ownership. Let that be very clear, and this is one of the established norm. It does not change the mindset. Appointment of CDS is very welcome decision by the government to infuse better coordination among the three services. It will be a single point contact to advise the government on defense matters, and CDS cannot and should not be partisan to the services to which he belongs. And I hope this will continue this kind of practice. And it is so in other fields also. When once a prime minister comes for him, every state is one of his own states. It doesn't belong to the party. The liaison and coordination between different services, particularly for joint operation at different echelons, is already in place by cross-posting of officers. We may look into this aspect a little more closely by posting a more senior and mature officer of another service if required, and that can be done by mutual consultations of various services. Today, we have GLOs posted to the unit level. We have got command and core commands and core and command headquarters we have got Air Force officers there and vice versa, so that our operations go smoothly and on the spot the advice is available. Now, we have already inter-service organizations, IDS, integrated defense staff for improved and better coordination, planning, training, procurement, logistics, etc. It is already functioning and in place. We also have in place a tri-service cyber functional agency and a space functional agency to develop better camaraderie and understand the working of other services. We also have tri-service joint training organizations. Right from the training, we have got like NDA. Then after that, at the major and lieutenant colonel level, we have Defense Services Staff College, and at higher level, at the brigadier level, we have National Defense College and management colleges for different level officers. Plus, we carry out tri-service and bi-service exercises regularly, besides international joint organizations exercises. Now, each service is free to carry out structural changes of our own service, and this has been happening to perform better. Modernization is one of the essential aspects, and each service carries out the modernization depending on the needs arising out of the adversary's preparedness and changes in their policy, plan, and equipment. So therefore, I personally feel that converting joint manship or to proprietary ownership will not produce any better synergy, nor will it bring about any economic gains or operational advantages. As I mentioned earlier, it will, if anything, adversely affect the strength of the Air Force, which the Air Force is already struggling with 31 squadrons against 42 squadrons required. It is in the, for the Air Force. About Navy also, they have, as I mentioned, opinion. They say the existing tactical and strategical operation and their requirements are fully met. There is no need for any change. A lone incident, as I mentioned, I'll briefly elaborate what happened in 1971 and 1999 Kargil War. What happened in that, and why is it created so much of heat? A lone incident during initial stages of difference in perception it was between Army and Air Force to tackle the Kargil operation. Cited as lack of energy, should not be taken too far, which was actually failure of intelligence and assessment of strength of enemy by the Army as discussed earlier. The initial delay in launching of air operation was due to suggestion of Army and asking for heli-borne operations. Was due to suggestion of Army, and the air power was denied at that time because these helicopters were not suitable for that particular terrain because of the limitation of the helicopters, which could have come under the ground fire. And it happened in later stages when our one helicopter, he was on the recce mission, it was shot down. Immediately, once chief came, Army chief came, he discussed with the Air Force chief, and both of them, they went to Prime Minister. Prime Minister cleared the air operation, of course, with a certain caveat that you will not cross LOC and you can carry on operations within the within those constraints. The Air Force, you will appreciate that, and the kind of contour which you have in Kargil area is so difficult that you go straight, then turn suddenly and reverse your kind of direction and fire at the bunkers also, where these people were deeply entrenched. It was a very difficult operation, but initially we lost about 2 MiG-21. One was, of course, came under the ground fire and was shot down. The second one, which went to look after the first kind of MiG-21, which was down by these people, he was also shot down. So we lost 2 MiG-21 aircraft, and thereafter, of course, we modified Mirage aircraft with smart bombs. And with the smart bombs, we released the weapons inside the bunkers, and then that's how these people were annihilated, and we got the our mission completed in short time. So this is what happened in 1971. So that should not be kind of constituting that lack of synergy. It was little perception, and whether it was army or the air force, one might say yes that when army chief was away, air chief should have volunteered and gone to the chief himself. Okay, that this situation army has come, and the army didn't want to go there, then of course air force could have gone individually and requested for the air operation, which was not there, but they waited for the army chief, and as soon as he came, this was achieved. So I would therefore urge the service chiefs and CDS to reconcile their perceived differences and evolve a commonly agreed approach to strengthen our military might. Let's not that kind of have differing views. We have to stand united to achieve our common goal, and everybody is working for the national interest, be it the Army, Air Force, or Navy. With these few words, I complete my talk. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Air Marshal Dr. R.C. Bajpayee, for an excellent lecture on this very contentious topic. I am glad that you talked about, enhancing the synergy and the jointness rather than going for total integration. One fear one has is that there may be some deprofessionalization and hampering the process of modernization if you have total integration. Domain expertise is very, very important in today's world. And if you have a confused structure, it may lead to lack of or obstruction to enhancing excellence and sort of diffusion of responsibilities and diffusion in roles. So that has been one of the major concerns, and I'm glad that you very eloquently put forth your views, and that is what, as outsiders, we want to hear and listen as to what are various viewpoints. Sometimes, old is gold. You know, just because a concept or a practice is new does not make it much more effective or much more, professional. So that's my personal point of view, but I will invite our audience. We have very limited audience because it's a very specialized subject. But if our audience want to have any questions, this is the time to ask questions.
And before they allow me to add one more sentence.
Sure.
These are my personal views, and not as a kind of Air Force officer, because my family is representing all three branches of the defense forces, bureaucracy, and the corporate sector. Therefore, I cannot speak, I don't speak about any particular service and against that with kind of biased views. These are my personal views as I have seen and as I have analyzed, and I think in my opinion. So there is no bias attached to my whatever I have said.
We understand that, sir, these are highly objective, highly academic viewpoint of a very contentious topic on which we have pretty much, debated around more than 20 years, leading to the current situation. But there is a reason for caution rather than take a gung-ho approach and not realize what are the future consequences for the security and defense of India, because ultimately that is what is more supreme rather than any turf battles or, ego issues kind of thing. The institution of CDS is excellent, and that should continue without any kind of reservation for one service or the other. They should be, the best meritorious candidate should become the CDS. But total integration, there are some challenges, and let's see what our viewers have any questions. Anyone has any questions, please send through the chat function. So there is a question from Ankush Bhandari that there are 5 integrated commands, but there is a news that there will be many more in future. Dr. Bajpai?
Well, as I mentioned, that what they have presented now, where these 4 commanders have been deputed to work out the approach groundwork for the establishment of these commands. So initially, they have thought of 2 ground commands, one maritime command and one air defense command. And of course, the Andaman and Nicobar command that is already established. So if you count that, this makes 5. And thereafter, if they want to further split, of course, there are views. There are different kind of models which have been presented by the USI. Of course, everybody is free to propose something, but this is what has been done now, and where these officers have jointly started their work.
Okay. Any more questions? We have a couple of people who did show some reactions. Any questions?
Yes, may I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Yes,
Sure,
sir.
go ahead.
Thank you, Air Marshal, for your insight and service to the country, first of all. And we really appreciate you of it. One question I had, like when they integrate the whole uh, defenses, do they consider of centralizing power in one position, which can be a challenge if that is not properly person comes into the play of that position, causes kind of some conflicts.
Well, I got your point. There is, it seems to be little political overtones, and that fear should not be there, because we have proved during the last more than 7 decades of our existence as a kind of joint defense forces. We're still working on that. Of course, the individual service commander, they have appointed CDS already, so that fear is gone. But otherwise, army commands or air force command or naval command, that fear should not be there. Although our neighboring state Pakistan has had so many defense forces, prime ministers, presidents, and things like that. So therefore, we should not have that kind of fear in our country. That fear has gone now. Initially, that fear was there, and that's what prompted our political masters not to develop our forces. And 1962, and when we lost so many our army personnel fighting on the border, ill-equipped. They didn't have proper clothing, they didn't have proper weapons, and the fear was in the mind of those political masters that their government will be overthrown like it happens in the neighboring state Pakistan. So that has, our forces have proved all along that they are apolitical, and they don't have any ambition of that type, nor any activity, and it has never been seen like that. So I don't think that fear is has any real thing. It's only kind of apprehensions that always exist in the mind of people, but that should not be there. There's no reality.
Thank you. And I
Any
had
more
one more.
questions from any other audience member? Please send through the chat function. Well, I am very, very thankful to Air Marshal Bajpayee for giving a very lucid, very detailed lecture on this particular issue. As moderator, I would say that we want excellence in all the services, whether they are the current ones or any future ones. We have now rather than getting into turf conflicts, which are not necessary. You know, at a mature level, when you are talking about the national security and national defense policies and strategic issues, minor sort of ego issues or turf issues between various services should be ignored, and my concern is lack of professionalization or role diffusion. If everybody is in the same sitting at the same level, there will be lack of professionalization if we continue with this particular approach. We want everyone to excel in the domain they are in.
Right.
And that should be the motto. And with those comments, I really thank Air Marshal Bajpayee for coming to us with this lecture. And I understand that we had to postpone it, and I'm not going to say why, but I'm really glad that we made it and we are wiser. For our viewers, this lecture has been recorded, so it will be a permanent educational instructional asset for all of us. You can go to Council for Strategic Affairs YouTube channel and you'll find this video. I am also thankful to our audience, besides being thankful to our distinguished expert today. And I would thank Team CSA, Mr. Rapudaman Pachori, Mr. Ankush Bhandari, and Mr. Rajiv Verma, who continuously help me to make these programs a success. So I'm highly thankful to them. And till our next program that is scheduled as a roundtable discussion on 9th of April, second Saturday for the month, I take your permission to leave. And again, from the bottom of my heart, I'm highly thankful to Air Marshal Dr. R.C. Bajpai, excellence, there academically, you know, in the field and all that sort of thing. So we couldn't have a better person to deliver this lecture. Thank you, everyone. Namaskar.